Welcome to Close of Business. I'm Alicia Barry. The latest GDP data has revealed the Australian economy is effectively flatlining. The weak growth of 0.2% in the March quarter has missed most economist expectations, and per capita, we're going backwards once again. David Chow reports.
Same tile, same pricing, same everything.
Everything's exactly the same.
And you got the full
Vince
detail.
Perry runs a carpet and tiles business. Many of his customers are tradies, and cash flow is a little inconsistent.
Business has been very, very erratic. So how big is this North Rocks job? There are quarters that we could be up to 40% down. There are other quarters we can be up to 50% up. We cannot predict tomorrow.
A lot of Vince's products are used for office renovations and fit-outs, but that part of his business has slowed down since COVID as more people are working from home.
And that's in offices, exhibitions, medical centres, everywhere. There is a lack of money out there. There's no money to spend. Whoever has money is not spending money.
And that's showing up in official figures. Australia is on the cusp of another household recession, with the level of economic growth per person going backwards.
The recovery that we've seen through the second half of last year and into this year is pretty sluggish. In fact, it's a bit like a toddler that's learning to walk and still shaky on his or her feet.
Australia's economy barely grew in the March quarter, up 0.2%, and 1.3% for the year. It was boosted by household spending on essentials like electricity and gas. Private sector investment rose, led by housing construction, mining and manufacturing. However, the result was dragged down by the biggest pullback in government spending since 2017. Australians are also deciding to save more of their money, driving up the household savings ratio.
Even modest growth is welcome in these global economic circumstances.
Mr. President, what's your message?
Chief among them is Donald Trump's unpredictable trade policies and his on and off again tariffs, which economists say could push the Reserve Bank to lower interest rates again.
I'm forecasting 3 more rate cuts before the end of this year, and part of that is the pessimism that I have on the global economy with US tariff policy.
There are storm clouds ahead for the Australian economy, so money markets are predicting a more than 80% chance of the Reserve Bank cutting interest rates at its next meeting in July. But if that doesn't end up happening, the odds of a rate cut in August are seen as almost certain in order to insulate the economy from the worst of the potential Trump tariff shock.
So what sort of profile have you roasted this to today?
So we do an omni roast.
Okay, beautiful. And what's it taste like?
Also feeling the heat is the coffee roasting industry.
We look after about 400 or 500 cafes nationally with Veneziano coffee roasters. Our sales to them are down about 5%. The indication of pricing was given.
And with the price of coffee beans surging over the past year, customers can expect to be charged even more for a cup of coffee in the new financial year, putting further strain on households.
I think we will see it move to $6 from 1st of July, and that's really where it needs to be for coffee roasters and for cafe owners to be sustainable moving forward. This is going to be a very tough time for the next 12 months.
Leaving a bitter taste for those on a tight budget.
It's official. House price growth is picking up, fuelled by a second interest rate cut. Capital city prices rose by 0.5% in May. Property analysts expect the trend will continue, with forecasts of rises between 6 to 10% by early next year. Nasim Kadem reports.
We're silent. Congratulations. Sold, well done, at 3,520,000.
Sales are running hot. In the nation's most expensive city, young families are on the hunt for their next home.
We saw a lot more bidders at auctions. I think that the interest rate drop has impacted the market quite positively.
Prices rose 0.5% in May, with the national median home now worth more than $830,000. Darwin, Perth and Brisbane led the monthly gains, followed by Hobart, Sydney, Melbourne, the regions, Adelaide and Canberra. In Melbourne, these first home buyers are trying to get in before they're priced out.
I reckon the market right now is good. I think we're freaking out that the market's going to go up.
The interest rate cuts is a bit of a double-edged sword. Yes, it brings your mortgage down, but it also drives up the price.
The major banks are forecasting the Reserve Bank will cut interest rates at least 2 more times this year. And some property analysts expect that could push up house prices by up to 10% by year's end. Cotality's Eliza Owen expects more first home buyers to try to enter the market when the First Home Guarantee Scheme is expanded at the start of next year.
Where you've got demand-side policies encouraging more people to buy and giving greater access to housing finance while your supply is limited, it is going to push prices higher.
With the median home price across capital cities now running near $1 million, breaking into the market is already a struggle for many.
The bromance between the US president and the world's richest man couldn't last. The very public breakup has turned into an all-out brawl, with Elon Musk and Donald Trump flinging insults at each other on social media. Amid accusations of lies, Musk now says Trump should be impeached, and Trump says Musk is suffering from, quote, Trump derangement syndrome. America's editor John Lyons is at the White House.
For the first 4 months of this presidency, it was one of the emblematic images. Donald Trump and Elon Musk, the world's most powerful man and the world's most wealthy man. It even appeared to become a friendship. Musk was a regular visitor here to the White House, with the president even allowing the grounds to be turned into essentially a Tesla showroom to help Elon Musk sell his cars. Then a week ago, a formal parting of the ways as Elon Musk concluded his role as chief cost cutter. The men attempted to portray the two as having an amicable breakup. President Trump even presented Mr. Musk with a golden key to the White House. But if that key was real, then the locks will have been changed. For several days now, Mr. Musk has been taking shots on social media against Donald Trump's centrepiece tax bill, arguing that it will essentially bankrupt America. Donald Trump allowed Musk's first few shots to go unanswered. But finally he replied that Musk had become bitter because he had been forced out the door and had cut electric vehicle subsidies. It was all an entertaining battle until Elon Musk decided to go ballistic. On X, he linked Donald Trump to the case of Jeffrey Epstein, the late financier who ran a sex trafficking network. Musk was in no doubt what he was doing. Time to drop the really big bomb, he said. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Now the White House will have to address such a serious allegation. And at a personal level, Donald Trump needs to decide, does he try to destroy Elon Musk to smash his credibility, or does he hope that the whole drama will go away?
David Bassanese is the chief economist with Australian and international fund manager BetterShares, and I spoke to him earlier. David Bassanese, welcome to Close of Business.
Good to be with you.
Uncertainty has been a hallmark of Trump's presidency. This bitter feud with Elon Musk goes way past that. How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, well, I think many expected their bromance, if you like, to not last. It's lasted probably a little bit longer than expected, but it's certainly blown up in a much bigger way than anyone could have imagined. The exchange of insults, the escalation of the insults has been pretty surprising. Look, from a market point of view, ultimately, it probably has implications for Tesla. I think if the more that Musk gets away from Trump is probably good news for Tesla investors. But I don't think it's going to affect tariff policy, for example, which is ultimately what the markets are most concerned about. Musk didn't have much say over tariffs, and he didn't have much say over government spending cuts either. I mean, he did leave before they made much in the way of spending cuts. So I don't think it's really going to affect policy all that much.
So how much faith do you think investors have in Trump?
Well, I think, we're giving him the benefit of the doubt at the moment. I mean, there's a so-called taco trade at the moment that's giving markets some comfort. The idea that Trump, he talks loudly, but he always chickens out. Trump always chickens out. So that being that he won't go ahead with big tariff increases, or he won't go ahead with policies that, could push the economy into recession. And, the fact that he did back down on the tariffs in early April, we've had a V-shaped recovery in markets since, and at the moment markets I think remain hopeful that he won't follow through with some of those big tariff threats.
Yeah, critics that have appeared on this show say that Trump is only interested in power politics, not policy. That doesn't provide much comfort for investors, does it?
No, I mean, I think he lost the presidency. He came back with a vengeance. I think he had a rush of power, and he wanted to obviously demonstrate to everybody he's the most important man in the world. So he swung the big tariff stick around. But look, markets realise that these tariffs are more a risk to the US economy, and ultimately, it's not credible to threaten massive tariff increases on other countries because it's an own goal to the US economy. And that's why, ultimately markets, at this stage, we could be wrong, are concluding or are hopeful that, he ultimately won't flow through with those threats. So a lot of, I think, what he is saying these days, markets are sort of, becoming accustomed to it in a way, and just, ultimately being guided by the fact that he hopefully won't go through with the worst of the policy announcements.
Well, on the economic front, this uncertainty is clouding soft data releases that we've seen this week so far. What's come out?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we have started to see some of the effects of the tariffs affecting the US data. I mean, for a while, the economy's remained quite resilient. It's really been the financial markets that reacted, but we've seen an important services sector survey overnight show a drop in business orders, business sentiment. We've seen weekly jobless claims tick up. They've been fairly steady for a while, and we've seen an early report on employment, the so-called ADP employment report, much weaker than expected. So it looks like May is the month in which the tariff effects are starting to hit the economy, which ultimately may well undermine Trump's bargaining position on tariffs. I mean, if it does look it is starting to negatively affect the economy, his threats on these big tariff increases, I think, will start to sound increasingly hollow.
Well, July 9th is the tariff negotiation deadline. Do you think that's going to bring any certainty to this uncertainty?
Well, no, it's still a very uncertain period. Look, what he might do is, keep postponing the tariff increases. There's no reason he has to go ahead with them July 9 if it turns out he hasn't yet struck a deal with many countries. So, potentially he just postpones and keeps talking. I think markets are, ultimately hoping and concluding we might get something like a 10% across-the-board tariff on countries, give Donald Trump some revenue to fund tax cuts, but maybe not a big enough tariff increase to push the economy into recession. And importantly, get tariffs behind us, even if it is 10%. But if businesses have certainty that they won't be changed thereafter, that would, it's actually the uncertainty of tariffs is even more costly than the level of tariffs at this point.
David Bassanese, thank you so much.
No worries. Great to be with you.
Bitcoin may be booming, but so are crypto scams. Australia's financial crimes regulator is cracking down on crypto ATMs as fresh concerns emerge. They're becoming an increasingly popular choice for criminal activity. Rihanna Whitson has this exclusive report.
Bitcoin ATMs. These things are popping up everywhere.
They are increasingly being used by scammers.
If you answer yes to any of them, you're likely being scammed.
Money laundering, drug deals and money mules. Cryptocurrency ATMs have been making global headlines for the wrong reasons.
It's time for the cryptocurrency industry to step up.
Now Australian authorities are intervening.
I'm only worried about people being victims of scams. We're worried about drug purchasing and other money laundering activity happening through cryptocurrency ATMs.
As banks crack down on scams and money laundering, criminals are turning to crypto ATMs, which turn cash into digital currency in online wallets.
Australia is certainly a very key target, given that we have high levels of savings and wealth.
The machines are found across the country in places we all visit, from shops to petrol stations. In 2019, there were just 23. Now there are more than 1,800. AUSTRAC analysed 3 months of crypto ATM transactions from 9 operators and confirmed The machines are being used in scams and fraud.
We're concerned that it could be as high as 1 in 10 illegitimate purposes in these transactions.
The Financial Crimes Regulator estimates $275 million is moved through the machines in a year across 150,000 transactions. 99% were cash deposits. The majority of users were aged over 50, accounting for nearly 72% of all transactions by value.
And it does match that cohort of the population that are being targeted by international scammers.
The ABC understands AUSTRAC has traced some transactions to scam hotspots in Asia and Europe and linked them to organised crime networks. Last year, Robert, whose name we've changed for privacy reasons, unwittingly became a money mule after applying for a job he found online. He was sent money by a fake UK employer and told to withdraw it and redeposit it using a crypto ATM.
I just followed her instructions, and then that went on. It took me probably about a good half hour because I've never used those machines before.
Robert laundered thousands of dollars for overseas criminals before his bank flagged suspicious activity.
When I got the notification, and I was thinking to myself, maybe these people might be into something a little bit, fishy.
It shows a proliferation of them all throughout Australia.
In just 12 months, Australians lost at least $3 million to scams involving crypto ATMs.
I'm aware of a particular case where an elderly gentleman was involved in a romance scam type situation and unfortunately was convinced to part with $1.4 million.
Make sure to insert one bill at a time.
Cash that goes into them is almost impossible to recover.
This is organised cybercrime. They're incredibly well drilled when it comes to their scripts and the way that they will manipulate us.
While in countries like the UK, crypto ATMs are banned, here in Australia, the regulator AUSTRAC is imposing new conditions on operators, including $5,000 limits on transactions, mandatory scam warnings and stricter reporting obligations. It's also refused to renew the registration of one crypto ATM owner, Harrow's Empires. The industry says most users are legitimate traders with little choice but to bypass mainstream banks.
One of the challenges that Australians have is if they want to buy crypto, sometimes their banks won't allow them to buy crypto, so they have to withdraw cash and then they can go to a crypto ATM and they can buy crypto that way.
AUSTRAC says broader regulation is needed to stop the ATMs being misused by scammers and criminals. Would that still make it a profitable industry to be in for the operators?
Well, I think no one's been able to crack the code of how to stop scams. The biggest banks in Australia haven't been able to completely eradicate that risk.
A lucrative industry on notice.
Mining giant Rio Tinto has cut the ribbon on a new 25 million tonne Western Range mine. The expansion comes at a time when major customer China is seeing steel production decline. Clint Jasper was in Parapadu for the opening of the new mine. Clint, Rio is ramping up supply as Chinese demand starts to head south. And Fortescue's Andrew Forrest has recently raised concerns the whole Pilbara could become a wasteland. Did Rio Tinto have anything to say about that?
They absolutely did. What Andrew Forrest was referring to was concerns that the type of iron ore that the Pilbara's been pumping out for decades isn't quite up to the specifications that are required by green steel producers today. Now, Jakob Straussum stopped short of saying that Rio was ready to supply the green steel industry right now, but he did make a point that this new mine I'm here at visited today, and the fact that that's a partnership with China's biggest steel company means that they're actively working on those solutions and they're committed to decarbonising the whole steel supply chain. So essentially, he told us they're working on the problem.
Well, on another issue, China's Xi Jinping and Donald Trump had an amicable phone call this week. Rio, though, of course, is very exposed to tariffs via China. What did they have to say about that risk?
Rio's leaders were pretty mum on the subject of tariffs, but at the opening of the mine today, the Premier of Western Australia, Roger Cook, and the Federal Resources Minister, Madeleine King, both spoke about the importance of China to WA and Australia's economy. And Madeleine King essentially reassured everyone at today's mine opening that the federal government was committed to a long-term economic relationship with China and to working with the US to ensure all of the turmoil caused by this trade uncertainty can be smoothed out in the future. Of course, the iron ore price dipped this week off concerns that Donald Trump's doubling of the steel tariffs could further impact steel demand in China. And it's something that absolutely flows back to WA's Pilbara. So always a concern for Australian iron ore producers.
Clint Jasper from the Pilbara, thank you so much.
Thanks, Alicia.
The Australian share market flirted with a new high, but it couldn't hang on. By the end of the week, the ASX 200 and the All Ords added almost 1% each. Gemma Dale from NAB Trade joined me. Gemma, there was certainly a lot of news for investors to digest this week, but the big one was certainly the breakup of the bromance between Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
Yeah, no, it's an extraordinary time. I don't think we ever thought we'd be talking about bromances or breakups of bromances in a market update, but here we are. But there are real economic and market implications. I think one of the things Elon has been calling out is his incredible frustration with this big, beautiful bill, which has the potential to dramatically increase spending or dramatically increase the US federal government deficit. That's a real problem for bond markets in particular. They're very concerned about that. There will be significant implications for spending. There is clearly some wind back of EV subsidies in that bill, which is what Elon's upset about, but there's a lot of other things as well. Markets are watching.
And as you allude to, this is getting pretty serious for US tech investors in particular. We saw Tesla shares slump at the end of the week.
It's been a wild ride for Tesla investors anyway, but should call out it's not just Tesla investors. If you hold the S&P 500 or have any exposure really to US equities, Tesla is the 11th largest holding in the S&P 500 at the moment, and it has been substantially higher than that. It's been on a very wild ride over 12 months. It's up about 60% over 12 months, which is easy to forget because it's fallen very aggressively. It peaked up about 200% after the election when Elon's support for Trump was so beneficial for the stock, and then we've seen it come back so much. I mean, it's a difficult time to be in that stock, but to be exposed to US equities at all.
Well, in Australia, miners did well after the phone call between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump. Any sort of positive takeaways there?
Look, I think it was a fairly modest response, and the reason for that is there have been a lot of phone calls that have been reported on, but the actual deals have not yet materialised. And I think markets and traders and commodity traders are having to sort of hold fire a little bit, knowing that we've got a way to go, right? Like, there's not landed yet. Yes, it seems moderately positive, but markets have priced back in a lot of good news when we look at equity markets in particular, and it hasn't really materialised. We have not seen the final outcome of tariffs. We're still in the pause. So at this point in time, you don't want to get ahead of yourself, right?
And that's the risk, right? Everyone's in a bit of a holding pattern because no one knows really what's coming next.
Absolutely. And I think for equity investors in particular, we've seen this extraordinary rally come off the lows after Liberation Day. The US markets were very expensive coming into 2025. We had forward PEs, not just PEs, but forward PEs above the 5 and the 10-year average. So yes, markets came off, but they've come back incredibly hard to quite expensive levels, and we still don't know where we're going to land. So at this point in time, there's a bit of downside risk, I think, still to play out.
And in Australia, we were just shy of a record this week, didn't quite get there.
Yeah, same story. I think, we talk about markets climbing this wall of worry, and they've climbed them very effectively, right? There was a lot of bad news. It was priced in very quickly and then priced out again very quickly. And so we see this real potential to get back to the highs. It's so close, it's just a whisker away. But again, a lot of potential for bad news to drive the market down again.
Absolutely. Gemma Dale, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Fancy getting a hot coffee or a burrito delivered to you by air? Companies behind drone delivery services will tell you they are the future. But as Daniel Ziffer reports, with millions of drones taking to the skies, just who regulates the suburban airspace and complaints is far from clear.
Drone delivery trial sites across Australia have logged tens of thousands of flights.
The vision is to architect a highway infrastructure across our skyscape.
Few people have complained, but there are reasons for that. In Australia, there are approximately 3 million drones, but documents obtained through the Freedom of Information process show there were just 9 complaints about noise from drone deliveries last year, taking the total to under 100 since 2020. Just 3 complaints were about general drone noise. The Department of Infrastructure, which is in charge of the Civil Aviation Safety Authority, has no power to do anything.
It's a very unusual situation where people would be complaining about noise directly to a federal department.
The number of complaints is being used as a proxy of community tolerance for drones.
The documents reveal some people complaining about their house being flown over as frequently as 3 times in 4 minutes. I've been sitting in the bath and watched them through the window fly past with direct line of sight, wrote one complainant in the ACT. A department staffer insisted the noise couldn't be from a drone delivery service, yet an email trail shows it was.
Currently, noise is the flashpoint for people on the ground, but the technology will improve. The bigger issue will become, how happy are we to have major freeways operating just above our heads?
What hasn't really happened has been a political discussion about the desirability of drone delivery services.
An issue that's taking off.
And that's all from Close of Business. I'm Alicia Barry. Thanks for watching.